Hello, and welcome to Break for Art. My name is Sarah Greenberg, and I am the manager of adult programs at the DMA. Today, we're going to take a few minutes to look closely at these Lokapala from the early 8th century. If you haven't already, click this window into full screen. Pause here for as long as you'd like to examine the artworks, and take note of what words and questions come to mind as you're looking. Here we see two ceramic figures triumphantly posed in ornate regalia in shiny, lustrous colors. Scientific tests indicate that despite their near-new appearance, they are almost 1,300 years old. How did such elaborate objects sculpted in fragile pottery survive so long? What are they? What was their purpose? Part of the Buddhist iconographic tradition, Lokapala were adopted into Chinese culture during the Tang Dynasty when the Chinese state grew dramatically in contact with foreign peoples and ideas that were transported over the Silk Road. Lokapala are the heavenly guardians of the four cardinal directions and served as protectors from evil. Four figures would have been placed inside temples or tombs at the four cardinal points. This pair of Lokapala represents two of the four Buddhist guardian figures. Why do you think Chinese nobility would want these statues in their tombs with their other belongings? Let's start exploring that question by examining the Lokapala's facial expressions. How would you describe them? What message are they trying to communicate? Through careful modeling, the artist was able to bring a lifelike, emotive quality to these sculptures. The intensely furrowed brows and protruding laser-focused eyes communicate a sense of ferocity, maybe even anger, that discourages onlookers from getting too close. Adding to their menacing appearance, the figure on the left has his mouth slightly ajar, as if he is frozen in the middle of releasing a ferocious roar. What else did you notice about these sculptures that hint at their function? Standing at just over 3 feet tall, these Lokapala are proudly animated in dynamic postures that suggest they are ready to act at a moment's notice. One hand sits on their hips, while the other is raised in the air with a tightly clenched fist. If we zoom in, we see that there is a hole that runs through the middle of their fists, a clue that there is a missing piece to these sculptures. Traditionally, these tomb guardians were equipped with weapons, just one element that spoke to their roles as great defenders. Another striking aspect of these sculptures that illustrate their role is their fanciful armor and elaborate helmets. With flowing scarves, ruffled sleeves, and decorative medallions, this style of intricate decoration represents the height of funerary art in the first half of the 8th century in China, when exotic goods and animals were brought over across ancient trading routes. Throughout the Lokapala's costuming, references to exotic animal symbolism can be found. What animal elements did you notice as you were looking, and what do these animals tell us about the Lokapala and how they are meant to be understood? Starting at the top of their heads, we see fantastic headdresses that may represent the phoenix, a mythological bird that lived for over 500 years, consumed itself in fire, and then rose from the ashes to live again. As the bird of resurrection, it makes perfect sense for it to be placed in front of a burial. Moving down, we see shoulder guards with the head of other mythical beasts, and on the figure on the right, legs that emerge from the mouths of elephants. What do you think these animals symbolize? Lokapala are said to not only gain power through their association with animals, but through their dominance over them as well. Their ultimate triumph as guardians is expressed symbolically through trampling a struggling demon or balancing on the figure of a reclining bull. The bull, typically thought of as being a mighty, strong, and dangerous animal, is powerless against the force of the Lokapala. While the figure squashed underneath the other guardian's foot is not necessarily an animal, it is symbolic of the evil that threatens the human world. The semi-human creature wrestles on his back with his arms and legs splayed open, his muscles clearly defined to once again highlight the overwhelming strength of the Lokapala. Notice how this figure's face is glazed in a dark green color, an artistic choice which might be understood as a sign of losing oxygen. This leads us into a good opportunity to discuss the most fantastic element of these artworks, their glazing. Termed three-color, these lead glazes were colored with metallic oxides like iron, copper, or cobalt to create brown, green, or blue hues after firing. With closer inspection, we can get a sense of how the artist wielded his paintbrush and applied the glaze by splashing, streaking, and dappling it over the surface of the clay. In the most imposing examples, such as these, color areas were carefully kept separate to emphasize the brilliance and boldness of the color combinations and proclaim the status of the deceased. The solid, smooth glaze on the Guardian's armor gives the appeal of a polished texture. You might notice how, in comparison, the faces of the Guardians have a rougher texture as they were left unglazed. Why do you think this is? Perhaps it was an artistically driven decision to amplify the contrast of human skin to armor, or maybe it was done to emphasize the figure's sternness. I hope you enjoyed slowing down with me today while we explored these magnificent works of art. I encourage you to linger a little longer and see what other discoveries you can make. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Break for Art.